You enjoying your new spot?
Yeah, it's a lovely spot, actually.
Is it?
Yeah. Very lively, but in a very settling, quiet, blissful way.
Maybe that's why I was fading in and out to samadhi last week.
I think it actually is.
Yeah, that spot.
Because I can feel that myself.
Yeah.
It's hard to come back out to here.
Right.
Even as charming as us sitting here talking, I know is and I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Is sometimes the dropping into the union of consciousness, let's say, is far more exciting and enjoyable. Not exciting is not the right word. Charming.
Charming.
Than anything the outside world has to offer.
I know, it's funny. When I first had my awakening, I mean, by that time I wasn't meditating in the same way as I had in previous years, because the last days and years of my seeking were characterized by a sort of a moment-to-moment practice of returning to presence. That was
Life as a meditation.
So my daily life was a living meditation. I was always consciously returning to my own awake presence.
Yeah, I call that informal meditation.
Yeah, right. And then awakening happened, and that actually became nothing that I even remotely had to do. It was just, this awareness presence is always here and through all things. So it was subtly different, but profoundly different.
And sometimes content is there and sometimes content isn't
absolutely. So, true Sahaja Samadhi is the natural state where all life plays out, all content is present, but the awareness presence is ubiquitous. So I found that I was not practicing anymore because, in big parts there was no one left to practice. And it's a non-dual trope, but there was no one left to practice.
Yeah. And no in or out, none of these ideas of I go and meditate.
Yeah.
And then I come back out into normal day, which is a stage and very valid for a lot of people. But there comes a point where it's not that anymore.
It's not that anymore. But what I did notice in the months following were that I would be going about my business, my daily business. And to this day, actually, what you talked about, I feel like a call, energetic pull, a gravity within that pulls all my attention, all my awareness back into its abiding source. And it almost feels something like a tortoise withdrawing from, the outer, all the limbs and the head and the limbs all withdrawing, tucking back into that silent source that is pre-sensory, let's say.
Yeah. Pre-content, pre-sensory, You would
Samadhi.
call that swooning.
I used to
love that.
Yeah.
That
and
word.
I still do it, and it calls me for as long as it wants me, and I can't. There's no resisting it. It just is into that, and it's beautiful, and it's just abidance, and it's full as well. Though it's just full, energetically full, and blissful, and peaceful, but there's no awareness of anything
other than awareness,
other than itself.
Yeah,
it's awareness of
and
awareness.
actually, any resistance to that is quite disturbing. Actually, any feeling like, oh, I shouldn't be. There shouldn't be following that, or something out external is pulling the attention out of that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, I mean, if you're driving, you have to, let's say, resist it, or you can hear it there, you can feel it like wanting you, but
it's not practical.
Not practical or appropriate to sort of swoon in the car and let it drive itself.
No, not so much. We're having trouble with the levels here.
Is that better? Yeah. Sorry, GarageBand just threw up a signal saying I needed to apply feedback protection, which I'm doing on both channels now. It detected feedback and just stopped it. Anyway, so yeah, you can't go drive in a car.
Not so much.
Not so much. And actually, you're right. Sometimes what stops, let's say, the following of the call or the falling into this greater gravity of simple abidance, what stops that is sometimes this habitual conditioned thing, like, well, like, I need to do this, I have to do that. Those kind of notions still need to be burned away a little bit.
Yeah, because in that is a non-trusting of the moment, that it's like life's presenting this moment as pull. For me, I would describe it as like a pebble dropping into a deep lake. It's like you energetically can feel that gravity pull. You can actually feel it, and it like goes right from the center of the head for me, right the way down into the heart, and actually even it doesn't stop. It just keeps that energetic pull. And there can sometimes be these leftover sort of ideas of conditioning that says, yes, but that's not a good use of time, or that's not all of this, like just these habitual ways of interacting with life, and lacking in trust of what life is presenting as not being of good value.
Yeah. Well, I had one of my students before who one day they would contact me with various things going on, and I'm usually fine. Then one day they said, oh, I can't move. Like, I can't. I'm all my energy is sapped away, and I've got things to do. I have to go about, and but all the symptoms that she was. Let's try to be non-gendered there, but okay.
All the symptoms were.
All the symptoms they. Anyway, they were recounting to me was clearly that life and your being, your consciousness is actually wanting to withdraw into its own silent abidance. It's like life wants to meditate now. Life wants to meditate you now. Follow it. And our conditioning says, no, we have to go according to our plans. We have to go according to what the clock says. We have to go according to what we arranged earlier, and our egoic preferences, however seemingly harmless. And in many ways, we've talked about this before, that society and culture is not oriented around allowing people to follow the impulses of their nature in moment to moment. And so, in a way, after all this happened for us, we had to create a new life for ourselves, that in order that we could more respond to the natural calling into our being and the different moving freely without sort of conditioned encumbrances.
And I think that call into that silent being is actually a really necessary part of the process, because it's like we are so conditioned and so comfortable with the world of content, but actually that call to silence, that call to beingness, is a really important part of the maturation process, I feel, because it's like time spent, it's beyond time and space, but for the use of this conversation, it's time spent in sort of coming to know that level of life, that aspect of life. And it's really, I feel, a very important part of coming to know oneself and the ground of oneself. And it's where it goes from being theoretical and intellectual into direct experience and abidance. And in that, it's like life naturally wants to pull into that recognition, into that direct experience. So it's not just theoretical. So it is actually a growing direct experience of your nature, of your fundamental nature.
Right. And it's funny, because in some ways, after my, let's say, shift, I now I feel more like an animal than I do the constructed, conditioned human.
Totally get you.
I need to respond to my embodied and energetic needs as they arise for the most part. I mean, sometimes something comes up and you literally, as I say, you're driving or you just simply can't respond to your own kind of moment to moment needs in the same way. But it does feel more like an animal, or I feel like I say more like a single-celled animal, that simply senses warmth over there and it just moves there. On food source, it moves there. No,
it's
the
intuition.
being moves itself, not the mind doesn't move
because it makes sense
and direct.
Yeah. It's not right. You're living from a space of it's not about rationale. It's not. No. Doesn't rationale is fine, but that it's from a deeper intelligence. It's from an intelligence,
pre-rational or trans-rational.
Exactly.
It is a higher intelligence of which rationality is only a part.
Yeah, it's included. It's not excluded from that, but it's much more all-encompassing. The way of movement of life is more than any one part of it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that quote, the Maharshi one of the whole is larger than the sum of the parts. Yeah. And it's that, and it's the wholeness of our being is has an intelligence to it that is moving in ways that is beyond what we can rationalize or understand or make sense of sometimes. And it sort of leads on to that thing we were just briefly talking about earlier today of how there's sort of an intelligence that knows what's coming ahead before it happens.
Before the mind does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like the human part of us is looking at life through this sort of linear time-space fashion, and it's actually really limited view.
Yes.
And there's when you are sort of deconditioning or deconditioned from that limited viewpoint, you start your whole sort of perception of life starts to open up. I say open up and refine. And in that refinement and opening, you start to notice that there's a lot more going on than our commentary of what's going on. There's a lot more information. There's a lot more, there's a lot more going on than we can possibly fathom or understand.
Yeah.
With the limited senses and the sort of the what do you call it? The interface, the limited interface. We have.
The limited viewpoints, we only see a fraction of the wholeness in a linear fashion. It's like the wholeness is that's already unmanifest is manifesting one frame at a time for us to see, and that's how all this is playing out. But the past, present, and future are all part of the same wholeness, and this
there is no past, present, and future.
Right, exactly. But the story of the past, present, and future is already available, sitting on the sitting on the hard drive kind of thing. Like we get to watch we get to play out the movie.
Yeah, it's like the seed of the oak tree. The whole of the oak tree is in the seed.
Yeah, all its history and all its future. And
all its parentage. It's where it came from.
Yeah, and it was the metaphor or the analogy that jumped to mind is with a needle on the record. We're picking up this moment, playing the song where the tape head, this moment playing, frame at a time, moment at a time. But the record, the wholeness of all future and past history, it's all there, it's all present. But our human linear 3D view, 4D view through time and space is limited to this one point. So we're just seeing, we're just seeing the smallest part of it to allow that wholeness to manifest as as a kind of a linear story.
Yeah.
And so, touching on what you were talking about, that, we were talking about earlier, that, if something is coming up, some change or some activities are coming in the future, sometimes even if we're not really aware of it, we can feel the body mind ramping up to respond to something that is inevitable, I believe.
Yeah.
But not present in mind, not known. So it's not like the mind is responding to it in the body. But we're like, you can feel yourself getting energetically alert or something, and then you realize, oh, something's coming up that I need to be that alert for.
Yeah,
where our deep being is ahead of the game.
When we were sitting in silence there, I got this sense of a snake shedding its skin was the image that was coming. Mm-hmm. And I was feeling that that's the process I feel like I'm going through right now. Is like the snake, as it's ready to shed its skin, the skin is too tight. It's grown too big for its skin. And, I feel like I've been going through quite a shift right now, even though I don't know what it will look like. I don't know what the future holds of that shift, but I can feel it in process. And actually, I can feel that it's not even in process yet, but I can feel that it's coming into process, into being. Yeah. I can feel there's a shift, but I can't. It's not manifest yet.
Your mind doesn't know what it is yet.
But I can feel it energetically. Yeah. It's already there. It's already started. It's already present. Yeah. But that was the image, and it just became really clear to me when we were sitting before this that I'm a snake shedding its skin right now. That was the image. Right. And I think that's what we were talking about, like knowing something's coming, even though you can't see that something's coming, or you don't experiencing that something's coming necessarily, although maybe we do a little have a hint right now for us personally, but there's plenty of times where that's, there's been a big shift, like particularly in our lives, where we get these big, 180 changes out of the blue. Yeah. But somehow
we live with the human design, the left-handed cross of the unexpected, which we both have it, which means that our life is characterized by intermittent, unforeseen,
massive shifts.
Yeah, unexpected events that change our lives.
And that's happened throughout our life. And yet, we can, even though we can't see it coming, I think we can see, there's something gearing up. There's some energetic shift towards something before you're even aware it's going to happen.
So this is it. And it points to a deeper knowing then, doesn't it? A deeper knowing. And so what? So, and the knowingness is the knowingness of the wholeness, of time and space and all the things connected. And so whether the mind is privy to that, which it isn't typically, there is the falling into, let's say awakening or deeper connection with your true self, your essence, is connection or remembrance of that wholeness of knowingness. And how does that show up then in terms of how can we kind of have access to that? I'd say it's through intuition, as intuitive knowingness, because it's
and felt sense,
which actually are very synonymous almost.
I agree.
It's very hard to sort of distinguish. It's the intuitive knowingness is a somatic,
felt
for me, and for you too. I know it's felt. You feel it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Parsed
that's wrong,
through the body more than it's parsed through the mind. I would say it's
pre-intellectual, pre-mentation.
Yeah, preconceptual, ideas or beliefs of what.
Yeah, it just shows up as a felt sense of rightness or wrongness or. And so,
or even beyond that, a ramping up of energy, for instance, you can get an intuition or a feeling of a ramping up of more resource. I say energy, but more resource.
Yeah, like that's responding, whether one is even thought about acting on something.
Oh, totally.
And actually, so this first dawned on me years ago, this phenomena, because we both were involved with the TM movement for lots of years, and one of the big themes of Maharshi's work was not just the impact of transcendental meditation on the individual, but that when someone, and particularly when groups of practitioners practice together, then it generated, in his view, and there was he did a lot of scientific studies to support this, generated a coherence effect on society as a whole. Positive, when large groups would meditate together, the claim was that it would have positive effects on crime, on hospital admissions, on all sorts of things. And so negative trends would tend to diminish in this field effect, and positive trends would tend to, and life-supporting trends would tend to increase. And, whatever you make of the science of that, but the idea, the science was pretty strong. They did some good research on it, by all accounts. But what I noticed when I looked at the data, and this was just a cursory look at the data, and whether this holds true or whether this was just an insight I gleaned from my own interpretation, was that, and through anecdotal reports of people who were going on these courses, that say the course was going to start on 1st of May. People started to notice strange effects in their lives before the course had even started.
Yeah, I've had it reported in my retreats as well by people.
So before
many times, actually,
the event that pertains to be the causal agent, which is meditators cause positive effects.
Yeah.
You were seeing people, what we used to call in the TM movement, unstressing or purification. You would see people would report strong unstressing or purification symptoms before it had even started. And so if the causal agent was the course beginning and the group coming together and the people meditating together, then that shouldn't happen. And then I looked at some of the data, and I saw that marginally, looking at I don't know, it might be wrong on this, and it's worth looking at the data again, noticing that some of these reduced crime effects were starting just before the course started, just before the causal agent was set into motion. And this whole, that observation, both the anecdotal of the people who I knew who were joining in on these courses and their symptoms, let's say, and the data, which I would be worth looking at again in own reflection, but as I recall it, set off this understanding in me, which profoundly changed my whole approach to spirituality in general, was that far from meditation causing positive change, meditation itself was a symptom of the deeper positive change already occurring.
Yeah,
it was a symptom, not a cause. So
even the desire to sit down and meditate, or to pick up a book, or turn up in a satsang, or meditate with a group, or
wasn't a cause. It was a symptom of consciousness rising within the individual.
I mean, I have my own personal experience of change before a course when we went on that Adyashanti silent retreat in 2014.
Absolutely.
The morning of the retreat, bear in mind, a retreat that I didn't want to go to.
Yeah, sure.
Very skeptical about spending a week in silence at that point.
Yeah.
Had that big shift.
Yeah, you had a shift into non-duality that morning.
Hours before we were supposed to go to the course. Yeah. Which is crazy, really.
Yeah. And so again, and I guess what I'm pointing to, and it shifted my whole view, or rather it confirmed, because I'd already I was already deeply looking at the notion of no free will, or what we would call now perhaps non-doership.
Yeah.
Is that it's all just happening,
Yeah.
There's no agents performing action, and it's all they're following the, let's say, the laws of nature are running on their own speed in their own way, and there's no sort of what is must be.
And often what we see in terms of it's gross enough to be manifest enough, as in what we see is already several rungs up the ladder of what's already unfolding. And actually you tune into those finer levels and you start to pick up things sooner. But I have zero doubt that there's a hell of a lot going on even before this meat suit is able to pick up that.
But this actually pushes back to it's interesting talking about this as a way into recognizing non-doership. Generally, again, it was part of my path that even during TM checks, so if you're a TM meditator, you typically might go and have your meditation checked by a TM teacher once in a while, and they'll just sort of confirm the simplicity of the practice and make sure that you're, it's a subtle practice, so make sure you're kind of, doing it.
There's no effort.
And you're sort of on track. It's just nice to check in. I was quite charmed. But of course, one of the aspects of it was that, they sit you quietly down and close your eyes and just sit for a moment. And then they go, was it good? Or something like that. Did you notice thoughts? And I go, yeah, thoughts came. And sometimes thoughts came and sometimes thoughts didn't come. And did you notice how naturally they came? Something like that. And it blew me away how most, not to diss TMers here, but they missed the non-doing of all this. They missed the profound insight.
That's not what the focus is
to non-doership. It was like that. You're saying thoughts come on their own, thoughts go on their own, always.
So
and
true.
If you quietly just watch them often enough, and it's just a succession of thoughts, a succession of sensations, and there's no one thinking a thought, and there's no one, there's the experiencer itself is consciousness, and it's silent and
and it
uninvolved.
There's the emergence and the presence of a thought, and the dissolution and disappearance of that thought.
And that thought, exactly. And that thought itself could be, I'm thinking, right? But that thought, I'm thinking, just arose
is part
on
of it.
itself.
Yeah. Why do we take that as different than something else, than another thought? It's because it's got the word I in.
Yeah, and so it's the
stickiness of identification.
We identify with that voice that says I do.
Yeah.
Or I don't, or I should.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't have. I. So, it was funny, all those years of TM practice for me was not just taken at, was powerful and introduced me and repeatedly exposed me to my silent self. And so I'm really grateful for that. But at the same time, and Maharshi's teachings were beautiful, and he's just a real innovative and, genius insight into the Vedic structures, the consciousness and whatnot. But at the same time I was doing this, I was really inquiring, not taking it all at face value, and actually following the implications of certain specific things that I was recognizing in the simple practice. Because non-doership was a leap for a lot. Most of that.
We're spoon-fed as a society. You've got to achieve. You've got to strive. I mean, these are all
be responsible.
Doership. These are all you have to do this.
Yeah.
You must do that.
Yes.
It's all about effort, and you are in charge of that effort. You will succeed or fail off of the back of that effort, and it never calls into question who's the one making the effort.
Absolutely.
Is there a one making the effort, or is effort just a happening?
Yeah.
Or are you doing that
even
effort?
when, and you hear this protestation come from people when being exposed to the ideas of non-doership and no doer. When they get exposed to that idea, their objections to it also come from a person. It's like this idea, well, if I'm not doing, then no doing gets done.
Yeah, and I see that time and time again. Yeah, and
that's a misunderstanding.
That's the mind, the doer, fearful of its annihilation in this equation, and therefore supporting the idea and the theory that no, that can't possibly be the way.
Yeah.
But
advocating for its own existence, I guess. But it's like, no, it's not like doing stops. It's just that you realize you weren't the doer. No. And actually, in many, even the idea of a cosmic doer itself is even superfluous.
Yeah.
Doing just it happens.
Yeah.
Being and becoming happens. It shows, like, all this stuff shows up. It doesn't. You don't want to give up, an individual doer for like a bigger doer.
Yeah.
No, you just drop. You realize that's life spontaneously, in its own nature, is stirring. It doesn't need a doer as such. It doesn't need
someone pulling the strings of it all.
Yeah.
It's a happening.
Well, you won't find one anyway.
No, it's a happening. All of life as a natural unfolding of its own intelligence to move in a way that is most evolutionarily necessary.
Yes.
In each and every moment. And as to what necessary means, this is where we get the mind comes in. Well, this is necessary. This isn't necessary. No. Yeah. Just the fact that it's happening shows that it's necessary.
Yes. And I just so the phrase came up. The spontaneous self-interacting dynamics of consciousness.
Oh God, yes.
But it's right. That's how this thing moves. Consciousness, it stirs and interacts in its own self-referral nature. There's nothing outside of it, and we are that.
Yeah.
So
it's like I always get this image of a buffet. It's like you're turning up at the buffet and there's all these life experiences at this buffet. And it's like you as the human going, I don't like the salty food here. I just want the sweet food. Or I don't like the sour. I want the and it's this recognition of these are just all life experiences. This is all just part of the buffet of life, the experiencing of life. And through the experiencing, there's a further coming to understand life itself, the tables in which the buffet sits and the food in which that constitutes the buffet in its temporary form.
And so our let's say sufferings, our dissatisfactions, our miseries, whatever, our problems are, of the mind. And we can see, there's someone I know who lives near the coast. And if I'm down there driving past with them, they'll say, and the tide is out. They'll be, I don't like it when the tide's out. I don't like it when the tide's out. And when the tide's in, I like it when the tide's in. Tide's beautiful. But this is a great demonstration of choosing, let's say, not to accept and even love the tide outness is a huge missed opportunity. And it's that partiality that goes, I'm not even going to pay attention to that. I don't enjoy it. I don't want it. And some of that might be, it's okay to prefer this and to that, but there is a possible mechanism in there by which we cut ourselves off through our preconceived and conditioned ideas from a whole range of possibilities that, if allowed, if appreciated, if non-resisted, if settled into deeply,
there's always something to
become another source of joy, another source of insight, another source of growth. Let it in because if life is giving you that right now is the point. I'm not saying go and seek out those things that cause you misery, but if something is present, it has it actually has wisdom, and it's already here. And this is quite a radical teaching, deep and profound, and complete acceptance, because there is pain in life. But what I've found in my own limited, let's say, experiences of difficult, challenging, painful moments that arise, it's in deep acceptance that the best of that inevitability can be appreciated, and then we find something deeper in that as well, some meaning in that, perhaps. It's a tricky place to talk about, because pain is so, when we talk about deep acceptance and we talk of whatever's arising, that can come across as, well, you could be having an awful situation. There are people who have desperately awful situations. But what we're talking about, I think, is when we're talking about acceptance, often it's recognizing that the only place, or the best, most sane, and, let's say, peaceful or least difficult way to relate to reality is through acceptance, because resistance to what is, and that's what we're talking about, what is, resistance to what's already present only adds a layer of greater suffering to it.
Because you can be in deep acceptance, and yet it doesn't preclude or exclude, rather, say you're in deep pain, it doesn't exclude going to the doctor. It doesn't. No. That also can be deep acceptance. Yeah. So action can be a part of that deep acceptance. So it's not a no doing.
Yeah,
it's a non-doing. There's no doer.
And so there's two things. There's that. Oh well, it doesn't, just because we accept what's arising in the moment doesn't mean that, as you say, that we're going to preclude taking action to root out its causes and ameliorate our suffering. If you
have your sort of palms open to life, as in the acceptance of what is, that includes action and activity within it. Mm-hmm. It excludes nothing. It includes everything. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is it's not about exclusion. It's about inclusion. It's about including all into the recognition of this is what is. This is what is. Mm-hmm. Even, dare I say it, resistance. You actually can be an inclusion of resistance, this felt sense of resistance. And when there's an inclusion of resistance, there becomes a deeper recognition of acceptance of even that. And so it's the resistance, or the suffering even, you could say suffering here, is just a surface level, experiential, temporary aspect arising that is held in this deeper recognition of the inclusion of it all and the acceptance of it all. So it doesn't have to be either or. It's that resistance is a temporary, partial experience arising in a deeper sense of acceptance of what is.
And I think, so a big part of this, because, a big part of your teaching, I've seen it over these past years, has been about inclusion and letting in, and noticing where these, I don't want to speak for you, but noticing where these things are, we're excluding them, we're trying to excise them and deny them, and then including that, it's here, it is. So welcome it in, accept it as part of what life is expressing.
Yeah.
And there's an inevitability about that, and so relating to the inevitability of what is, with welcoming and inclusion.
Yeah, which is to me where this word, and it's my favorite word for the many months now, but is curiosity. I think that's the vehicle by which we can include everything, is when there is loving curiosity there. Suddenly you become curious of, well, I'm excluding this thing. What is this thing I'm excluding? And immediately the description of the moment is there's inclusion of this.
Yes, and what comes to mind here is that as someone, embarks on this process of inclusion, what gets revealed is from where all this can be included.
Yes.
And so in the discovery,
which is a huge part
you
of
want the nature that does already include.
Yeah, you want to
find include. There's
yeah.
the spiritual heart includes it all already,
Yeah.
and it's, in a sense, it's doing it, but also noticing that it's already present. There's these two layers of the teaching.
Because actually, if you are bound in your identity as the viewpoint of the mind-body, that is a limited resource, and that cannot include everything.
No.
There's where you get these senses of overwhelm. Oh my God, I can't include that. I'm gonna die because the body can't handle that. Well, on one level, yeah, that's entirely true. The body can't include everything, but there is something in your experience that can, and that you have to be able to identify that primarily.
The experiencer.
Yeah, the experiencer that doesn't have boundaries. So that's the first thing. Anything that has boundaries, of course it can't include everything, but it is included by that which is boundless.
Which is what we essentially are.
Exactly. And so for me, that teaching of inclusion is only viable when one points to what is it that can include all.
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise, it's
you're not asking
an impossibility.
You're not asking a person to include all.
No.
You're
finding that which includes even the person.
But it's sort of happening through the person, though, isn't it? It's a process that includes and works through a person.
It both transcends and includes the person, and actually, in that recognition, there's where the non-exclusion of it all is that it can both. Who and what we truly are can transcend. So it is prior to, it is before, and yet includes everything that possibly can show up within that.
And so I guess where someone, where you meet these holdouts, let's say these individual holdouts in terms of somewhere in someone's experience, one is habitually in a conditioned sense has identified a problem,
or an idea of I can't, well, no, not that bit, not that bit of myself. Oh no, that bit of myself is unacceptable.
Yeah. And so you're meeting those holdouts with awareness and with welcoming tenderness
and curiosity,
and seeing that it is
not
already held.
It's not true that it's needs to be excluded and gotten rid of and or fixed. I mean, fixed is a huge one there. Right. These idea of healing, these idea of fixing, and while not on one level not untrue.
Yeah, of course.
The body can heal, things can be fixed. Ultimately, it's still only on a relative level, and the deeper recognition is that all of this is temporary, and what is temporary doesn't need to be fixed. It's held within that which is unfixable. Doesn't need to be fixed. Yeah. It's beyond fixing. It's beyond healing. It's a description of the acceptance of what is, which I would synonymously use as love.
Well, there's a couple of there's a couple of dimensions of this, right? Because when I say this, we live in different dimensions, and I don't mean that in some sort of alien-esque sense.
Star Trek view.
Yeah, although that's fine. Just for the record, that's fine. Star Trek's fine. But the dimension of the already perfect being that unfolds in a perfect way. It's the suchness of reality as it is. There is nothing wrong with it on its own level.
No.
It is exactly
nothing
as
to be taken away, nothing to be gained, nothing to be included, nothing to be excluded.
Yes. So from that sense, nothing needs to be healed, nothing needs to be changed, nothing needs to be fixed, nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be taken away, nothing. No. It's already perfectly such. Huh?
As is.
As it is.
Yeah.
And yet, but we do live. Included in that is this evolving field of nature. You know that animals, plants, creation, planets.
What we would call the relative.
Humans, what we call the relative, and
or the dream. Some people call it the dream, the waking dream.
Yeah, and it has the dreamlike nature of reality, but it has direction, and it's filled with experiences, and all of them are fleeting, but some of them can be sustained and difficult.
Yeah.
But even those are...
It's the world of form.
It's the world of form. And so it's perfectly fine to, if it's available to you, to, seek healing and to seek more life, more growth.
Absolutely.
On all levels.
That's part of the joy of the fact that we do live in that world of life. But it's to recognize the limits of that, I think is where it's important, is to recognize that it is relative. Yeah. It is temporary. It is changeable. This is not the realm or dimension, whatever word you want to use, the state, the stage, the whatever. It's not the realm in which we can find stability.
And fulfillment.
Yeah.
Its nature is change on this level.
And so as long as you're not looking for those qualities to be present on that level, it's like enjoy, play, experience, grow.
Yes.
All of these things, heal, fix, change, all of that is very much part of that experience, that relative dimension of life.
Yeah.
And is a beautiful part. It's not to be denied. It's not to be negated and placed in a lesser value of life, placed in a sense of, oh, well, that's not as important or not as good as, our true nature. I know what you mean. But it is a temporary it's temporary, but it's not to value that as less than. Again, gets into the realm of exclusion, of duality, of the sense of this, not that. And instead of just recognizing that on that level, it has its uses, it has its joyful experiencing, but it also has its limits. It has its instability and its finite tendencies.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the Buddhist teachings, when they the noble truths, life is, not life is suffering. There is suffering. Suffering is, it shows up sometimes. And it's so much about how we relate to what they would call conditioned existence. So the relative, how we, let's say, or of course who the we is in this is, spurious, but how we relate to reality is and where suffering enters into it as a consequence of relating to reality in certain ways, and it's about imposing certain expectations on it in some regards. So expecting, as you say, this passing phenomenal dance, this Leela, that's all great. But if you're lost to your boundless ground of your nature, your true nature, your self nature, if you're not aware of your boundless nature, then you imagine yourself to be only of this conditioned, passing, changing realm, then vulnerability, the feeling of like, oh, if you think you're the body and the mind, oh, you're gonna know intuitively that, oh, if I'm this, which most people believe they are, then death is around the corner.
Yeah.
Disease, old age, and death, and all sorts of problems, because you know that this body's going to pass. That all that arises in this phenomenal realm, in this conditioned realm, it passes away. It's all impermanent, and so the identification with that as self it'll fill you with fear.
Yeah.
We have to discover the boundless self of which this is a manifestation, of which this is a kind of a
temporary manifestation,
temporary projection. And when one realizes oneself as consciousness,
and also therefore the nature of this,
and therefore the nature of what these arisings are, as a sort of temporary phenomenal passing, even though they're what we kind of constitute reality. It's the trouble is when we start to grasp at them and try to expect this to be other than it is.
Yeah, to behave and act to for instance, to be infinite when it's finite.
Yeah, and to be concrete when it's abstract, and to be permanent when it's impermanent. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're lost to the awareness nature, then you're never gonna there's no option than to be identified. And so that's why I think discovery of awareness as your ground is so crucial. Boundless awareness is so crucial to peace of mind.
It's been my experience that in the discovery of that ground of the infinite nature, beingness, that actually there's been over the years a lot more joy and lightful playfulness with what we call this life, this world, this relative world. There's actually somehow not only just joy and playfulness with it, like a lightness, like you take it less seriously or take it less heavily, but actually this is something that I would say the last couple of years for me is really come online in a way that it wasn't there early doors, let's say, is this sort of sense of sacredness of, because it's so temporary, because it's so fleeting. There's been a real enjoyment of the temporary, of the fleeting, rather than trying to grasp it and keep hold of it. Actually, the acknowledgement of the nature of the relative life has brought forth this sense that this relative life is very precious because it is so fleeting, because it is so temporary, and the mind will take that as, oh, I've got to grasp, I've got to keep hold of. But actually, when it's known in the heart that that's not the nature of this realm, there's no grasping, there's no resisting of the nature. There's just an enjoyment of the nature, the limits of this nature as well. Not a lamenting of those limits, but actually an inhabiting of those limits. Inhabiting the wholeness of it without feeling like there's a deficit there somehow, because it's not. That's all it's ever going to be. And in that, there's a real, the word sacred is what is very prevalent in my life, I feel nowadays. It's just this sense of the sacredness, not just the good stuff, not like, oh yeah, that's really lovely, that's sacred. I mean all of it.
All of it.
All of it. And that's something really hard to impart, I think, to people, particularly if they're having a hard time and then they haven't yet come to recognize the nature of the reality, and so they're trying to make it be something that it's not. To say this is sacred is it's a hard one to swallow. I think I've seen it time and time again.
I think a lot of this stuff is, to be honest. I mean, as we talk about, we're talking about this in a kind of a public way, and who will get to hear it will be the ones who are supposed to, I suppose. But compared to the materialist consensus paradigm, this is radical. It's a radical perspective. It's like it although perhaps only more in the modern age that's the idea of a non-corporeal ground of all being has been an anathema to intelligent thinking. Science is pointing to it more and more, so I think sooner or later the leap to that this is all a projection of consciousness, but that doesn't but also that is, as you say, it has a sacred quality. It has, that it's. I always come back to this notion in my heart that whatever I can manage to say about this reality, at the very bottom of it, it's a miracle and a mystery. The deepest nature of it is being shouldn't be, like, on the face of it, and that it is at all is just a singular miracle. And everything. So when people say, "Do you believe in miracles?" or something like that, the whole
what isn't a
thing
miracle?
is a miracle, right? That isness is, and not just nothing.
And this taps into, I see a lot of people have this wound, I'm going to call it, of I don't deserve to be here, or I'm unworthy, or I'm a mistake. Or my way of being is a mistake. Who I am, how I do things is a mistake. And for me, this really taps into this recognition of all of being brought you, this mind-body expression of consciousness, into being. Not by some mistake, not by some booby prize to life of like, oh, oops, we made a mistake. Right. You don't deserve to be here, actually, because you're not like this epitome of what a human being should be. I mean, does that exist? No. But we all have our ideas of what we should be. And so then you're measuring your sense of I should be here against this imagined idea of a successful, happy human being that needs to...
A self-image that's constructed through conditioning mostly.
And so I think one of the primary sort of things I bump into working with people time and time again is this sense of unworthiness, this sense of, if I'm not looking like that, then I shouldn't be. And this is the mystery and the beauty of life and the sacredness of life is you are. Mm-hmm. Whatever you think you should be, you are. Life has you in existence in this moment to experience who you are, as you are, to experience the world, whatever that looks like for you. This is what life wanted into being, what birthed into existence. And not because it went left rather than right. No, it's brought all of these elements, all of these experiences, all of these energies together to form this. And it may well be a mystery as to why, sure. You may not know why you're having this experience of life or why you turned out that way. But to say it's a mistake, I think is it's like it's one of my favorite words at the moment. Hubris is like the hubris of this, of the idea that you know what should be, rather than the recognition of what is.
Yes. No, it's really important, and it points to, for me, something just comes to mind. It points to that we can't judge someone else's path. No. We can't judge the value of someone else's path, even
or our own.
Well, yes, even though it might seem just a big problem, or other people doing egregious things, but what comes to mind is this theme I've noticed. Some types will judge, and I guess in modernism this is a sort of a moral hazard we have to be mindful of, that if we measure individual's value by their utility, then we're in deep moral territory. That I've heard speakers from with grand ideas about how humanity should be, speaking about we don't need this many people, and this whole swathe of people here they're not productive, society doesn't need them, and all that. And it's like, well, who's we first of all? Who's judging who's needed? And the idea that someone has a useful life and then they come to a halt, and then you
useful
might as well
what?
just, well, exactly. And I
Well,
think
what measure, and what is it then based on how much money you're making, or how much you're educating, or how much you're loving, or how much you're growing, or what is it based on?
Well, and this is it. This is the trouble with sort of some thinking on these kind of matters, is that we're judging people by their utility. It's instrumentalism, and not on even someone who lives in a cave and provides nothing for anyone, and eats,
seemingly provides nothing.
Well, yes, on the surface, but no, the point is that we are here as spiritual beings, and we are on our path. We are on our evolutionary journey. We are already that which we cannot be, that we cannot not be, the boundless being, but we're showing up also, as an evolving, growing, interacting human being, and we can't judge the dignity of anyone else's path. We have to just respect that, however it looks on our own, exactly, however it looks from the outside, you can't assign a true measure to that, because we're born to grow, we're born to evolve, we're born ultimately to come into the fullness of our being, perhaps into, maybe,
and who's
manifesting
to say what that
into eternity.
is?
We don't know, but it's the idea that every human being has intrinsic and infinite dignity, and you can't measure that. You can't measure that,
and that's to me why.
And it doesn't need justifying. Life
that's why comparison is really a very very tricky thing, because comparison immediately puts you in the framework of what I'm experiencing is incorrect and that person is correct, or vice versa. What I'm experiencing is correct, and it puts you in relation to other rather than in relation to self.
You're right. I mean, comparison's corrosive.
Yeah,
and we are each gifted a unique life.
Yeah,
and
you can't live another person's life, even if you try your very 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 best. Even twins, I think I've experienced, twins in my life.
Utterly unique experiences.
Yeah, even though they've had the same upbringing, they wear the same clothes, they look the same, they're still very different. And
when I mentioned this the other day, there was a quote in the Gita, and it points actually to comparison, and it points to trying to live someone else's life because you deem it better, or some exemplary life. And I think the quote goes something like, it is better to die in your own dharma than to live the dharma of another.
Yeah.
That it's just dangerous for your soul, for your being, to try to do what you think is good because someone else is doing it, and it's just to be honest, it's to reject the gift of the life that we're given on its own terms, and rather than looking around and comparing. And that's fine for the political level. Sure, I get it. People want, to be treated fairly. And of course that's part of it. But mustn't forget the deep, profound gift, the givenness of our existence.
Yeah, that we all walk, you call it a path. It's a pathless path. It's like we walk where our feet take us. And in that, our way up the mountain may look different from every other person, everyone that's gone before, everyone that comes after. Yeah. And to judge that as invaluable or wrong is to say that it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And yet, here's where we are at odds. It is happening.
And this is it. And it's the difference between, I can't help but compare this perspective, this spiritual perspective.
After we just told comparison is
Yes, the irony is. Thank you for that. No, but just to see that the spiritual perspective brings meaning and brings context and brings dignity to all of our experiences, and actually reflects the observable nature of our existence. And so I think to sit in that and see that the totality of experience, including all its all of its details and every bit of its expression, is meaningful in the most absolute sense.
Yeah.
And so
not in a relative term, meaning compared to what? No, it just meaningful in itself.
It is purposeful, meaningful, and it is our own individual path that is our existence is our way in.
Yeah, existence is. There's no if and or but about that. Yeah. Existence is.
Yes.
And actually, I think...
What do you do with it? How do you relate to it?
There's something, I think, that's really a beautiful something to meditate on for people, is to drop into the sense of existence is. And we can start with, I exist. Mm-hmm. But actually just allowing yourself to sort of drop into that once in a while in your life really is very affirming of the non-mistake of it all and the majesty of this existence. Yeah. Not what this existence, who this is, none of that. Just existence is. Yeah. And actually that's something that we can all feel. It's not a thought. It's something that you can tune into. In the gravity of that recognition is available in each and every moment.
The sense of your own
existence is. And in that, there's no room for, this is a mistake. This shouldn't be. No. I think it's a meditation I encourage sometimes of people, because it's really, it cuts through the crap. It cuts through that bullshit of, I should, the mind mentating over, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? Am I a mistake, or I'm a bad person? I'm a good person? All of that stuff. When you drop into just the sense existence is, none of that matters.
No, it's prior to all the mentally constructed problems.
Yeah. None of that matters. Yeah. And I use that word majesty because that's what the sense is there. It's like there's this I can feel it now welling in me, this sense of sacredness and majesty of existence is. It's really profound and inescapable. It's not something you can sort of justify or squirm around. It's just, it is.
It is the kind of irreducible fact of being. I am.
Yeah.
Am is.
Yeah.
Being
Amness.
is. I am that. I am prior to all. Yeah. As an experience.
Prior to even the notion I am.
Exactly.
Existence is.
And it's the ground of our experience. It's the lived ground. And it's not just, the ground of our experience over there. It is the living.
Yeah.
You
can't imagine it tomorrow.
It is here right now to be experienced right here, right now.
Yes.
Here it is. And everything else is kind of added on to that, let's say, or stirred up as a modulation of that. But that isness, that amness.
It's inescapable. And it's not something you imagine or go searching for. It's something when all searching stops, when you stop.
Mm-hmm. It's what remains. Here it is.
Yeah. It's what was always there.
But that's the great, it seems like a riddle sometimes. You are what you're seeking, and it's true.
Yeah.
But funny, you could drop the seeking for a minute. There you would find yourself.
You'd be a finder.
As that, yeah, or you would be.
Yes.
And it's really beautiful. It's so simple, and yet I get it. The mind's a monkey. Tricksy, hyped up ADHD monkey, and
thinking that it is the center of the universe.
Thinking and driving the dream bus.
When really it's just the child in the back with the toy steering wheel thinking it's in charge of the car.
Yeah.
When it never was.
I mean, that was a great insight. That was the great kind of shift to see that, oh, the mind isn't driving this bus at all.
No, even when it thinks it is, insists that it is.
Exactly.
Actually, there's something aware of even that, and that's something. It's not really a thing, but it's that is the knower, the seer of that, and that's the bit we miss because it's so ubiquitous, so ordinary, so mundane. We look to the objects of perception, and we forget. There's a forgetfulness of the perceiver.
The source, the perceiver, the knower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And the life moves, change happens, happening happens. And, the mind can claim that as its own. Oh, I did that. I'm doing that. Even it's so real time sometimes, but it's always after the event.
It's always after, even if it's split second, it's always after. And I think I remember early doors, that was something that became quite crystal clear for me. Like, oh, how could I possibly be doing the thought of doing always comes after the done.
Yes, the ownership. It's not looked at. It's not. Yeah. I wrote a little bit about this the other day, that about the illusion of free will, and it was like, actually, it's not even an illusion. No. There's no illusion of free will, because if you just look, you see there isn't. If you look,
it's an assumption of free will.
It's an assumption of free will.
A conceived, believed idea that is never challenged.
It's not even hidden, though. It's in plain sight. You just got to kind of notice it and go, oh. All thoughts come on their own. All sensations arise on their own.
But the implications of it are so vast and far-reaching in terms of the way we've orientated how we think we live life, that it brings into great fear, because it's trying to find stability. What does the sense of I have control give you? A sense of stability, a sense of security. And so when you recognize that actually the true stability is not in control, but is in beingness itself, you don't need control anymore. But all of that is orchestrated, all that sense of needing control and having free will and all that is orchestrated around the need for stability and looking for it in that which is inherently unstable. And so to me, it makes perfect sense why someone would want to have free will, because they want to have control. And why do they want to have control? Because they want stability, they want security, they want safety.
Yeah, because they're identified, and it's a bit of a self-fulfilling.
It is.
But
the answer to me for that is to drop into that sense of safety and stability that is beyond form and beyond content of life, and it drops into the subject of life. I am that which is stable. I am that which is secure. I am unchanging, ever present, ever infinite experience of this. I am that which knows all of this. And in that recognition, there's no control that is needed from this place.
Yeah, exactly. Because
there's no control that can be.
Primordial being that's present to all the changingness. It's terrible butchery of words there, but all the changes against the backdrop of the essential, unchanging, boundless nature. Yeah. I had a thought then, but it's lost. It's floated away. Let me see if I can get it back.
Good luck. Not in your control, but you may be able to notice it.
No, but if I keep quiet, maybe it'll return to me like a boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
No, you've jinxed me. It's over. It's gone. Flood.
Nice to know I'm all powerful, almighty.
You are. I know what I was going to say. It's a very mundane comment. That's why meditation's so powerful and important.
Yeah.
As, a way in, you have to, and again, it's if you're meditating or thinking about meditating, or it's symptomatic.
Yes.
And let's say the manifestation of that inner movement to spiritual growth and rising consciousness, some might say. But
yeah.
So, meditation is that, expose yourself to the quietness, the quiet, empty awareness. And that can take, like meditation, how many different forms are there? But, you talked about a powerful one. It's not even quite a method, it's a pointing, right? Yeah. But in practice it can be, take some time to do it. Take some time to notice and sit in your own sense of being, your own sense of existence. Sit as that. Yeah. Sit with that. That's one.
Meditation for me, and we talked earlier on in this conversation about what I would call informal meditation, as in your life becomes a meditation. Yeah. But there's also formal meditation. I think there's room for both in one's life. I think formal meditation for me, I see that as like a sandbox. It's like literally you're entering the sandbox. It's got sides. Yeah. And those sides are the parameters in which you're meditating. Yeah. So, okay, I turn off my phone. I stop talking to other people. I go into my room. I close my eyes. There's your sandbox. You're setting up these conditions whereby the attention is easily drawn into itself rather than outward to the objects of perception. You're the flow of attentiveness is towards the subject of perception, so the perceiver, the awareness. And so that's the context in which I see formal meditation. Is it's a sandbox. It's the place you practice what it is to sit in that recognition of who and what you are. Yeah,
it's isolated from the rest of your life. You take time out to do that, and that's such an important. I'm not saying it's even a beginning practice. It means really that is the foundational, because. After a while, what happens is you kind of kick the sides off the sandbox, and you tend to, it tends to spill over, and you're living once you've identified your ground. Let's say lots of different words, but the empty awareness, the quiet awareness, your presence,
background, the formlessness of yourself.
Once you discovered that, just being introduced to it, the gap between thoughts. Once that'll change everything in your life. Well, just that first introduction to that conscious awareness of awareness. Yeah. Noticing that.
Awareness turning in on itself.
Everything, because most people who aren't. Most people, the vast majority of people, their attention is always on the object, always on the objective. There's not even a recognition that there is a fundamental subjective. But this is where the idea of person comes. There's this idea that somewhere in here I'm Martyn fundamentally, but when you start going, well, who is Martyn?
Even that is an object, and then when you start to look at that becomes more and more obvious that actually even what I'm calling Imogen or Martyn is actually still an object of perception.
Yes,
it's still phenomenal arising.
It's not the true subject. It's a sort of it's a contingent subject.
Yeah, because there's a perceiver, an observer of the phenomenon we call Imogen.
Exactly. So once you discover that in its, let's say, primordial state, just the quietness of that, the awake, aware, alive nature of that in itself, as you said, as just your own sense of existence as existence. Nisargadatta would call it the I am. Honestly, I do feel that once most people are not even aware of that. Never had a glimpse, not even aware, not consciously aware. Once that conscious awareness of that, even for a glimpse, the first moment, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Because you are aware of it, but you're not consciously aware of it.
You didn't even know that existed before that moment.
Yeah, because it's that which is looking out of these eyes.
Yes.
And that which, when the eyes close, is still seeing, is still experiencing.
Yes.
Is so intimate with our life experience that we miss it. And so the word I think the most important there is consciously being aware of that. It's like, the penny drops.
Yes.
Because
we skip over, because we're so busy hopping from one object of attention to another that we miss the subject.
Yes. Who is aware
we
of
skip
that
over
object,
it, and then suddenly you go, there's a gap between thoughts, right? There's silence where I simply am as being, as aware, as awake. Here I am, but no.
Prior to the body, prior to thoughts, prior to memory, prior to sensations and smells and experience, all objects of perception, all of it. It's prior to all of that. And it's never not.
It's never not. Always already present. Always. And that's awakening. That's the discovery that, it's always already present. And in fact, it never got. And once it's like, it's almost like the background becomes the foreground. Like that's the discovery of, that's the background, is sort of awareness.
First the noticing of, oh my God, there is a background. What?
Yeah. I put background in quotes.
Because it's for me, I always get the image of a painting is like you've been so focused on the foreground figure in the painting, and someone goes, well, what about the background? You go, whoa, there's a background there. I didn't even notice that.
Right.
And then
it's like those picture of like the two vases, the black and white, the two faces become a vase, and you flip in and out of these. We focus on the object, but it sits against the background. When you do that, it changes the whole perception of
But until you see reality. It, you don't see it.
Yeah, indeed. So, that's the thing. Go and get introduced to your own silent, quiet beingness. And, settle in and make yourself at home there, and you'll kind of can fall in love with it. Actually, I think that's part of the.
Do you know the words that come? I sit in my own splendor.
Juicy.
That's the words that come when you say that to me.
Yes.
I sit in my own splendor.
Like it. I think we should take that splendorous note and
finish for today.
Okay, that was lovely. Thanks.
Thank you.